Okay, quick screencast for Teaching Week 33, creating custom controller components. I've got here the standard Web Architectures VM started up, logged in as student, password PA55W0RD. If I cd into my public HTML directory, I'll get rid of what was there before. Okay, and I'm going to clone from the ACESII repository the basic framework to get us started. So if I just git clone, so this is the git clone command here. You can see it's got my user ID in. Oh, sorry, this is the repository name, and it's using my SSH key. Okay, so we'll clone that. You should be able to use this git clone command as well. If I take a quick look at the git repository, you'll see that I've created branches for each of the teaching weeks to give you exactly the setup you need at the start of the tutorial sessions. So having checked it out, we can go git checkout teaching week 33. Okay, and that'll give us all the files we need, everything set up right for teaching week 33. Just in order to speed up the tutorials as well, I've also created this setup.SHU. All this does is to change the directory to this directory, recursively change the permissions and everything so you can write to all the files you need to, and then runs the MySQL scripts to set the database up. So this one creates the database, this one sets up the schema, and this one installs some test data. So we'll run that, setup.SHU. Okay, and we're good to go. If I very briefly go into public HTML, so there's this doc directory as well at the top level, and in there there's some notes. Hopefully, if we can open this file. Okay. Major changes to the schema since last time. Obviously, we've added this skills table now, which gives us a way of describing the skills that a particular student has and ranking them out of 7, and describing the skills that a particular job description requires. So if we have a job for a database administrator, we might have a requirement for SQL at level 7, and if there's a student who has a skill level 7 in SQL, then we'd call that a good match, and we'd be able to list those against each other. The rest of the model is as it's been the weeks before. Okay, we have a quick look at the notes and a quick recap. In week 27 we did some UML modelling of this application. 28 we looked at basic domain models, and we created that student model, if you remember, looked at scaffolds for editing the data. In week 29 we looked at some more advanced domain modelling, in particular the relationships and the associations between different classes. Week 30 we looked at non-scaffolded views and how we start to customise the user interface. 31 we did a recap. 32 last week was student presentations for assignment 2, so now we're up to week 33 where we're going to look at custom controllers. Okay, and in the lecture we'll look at why we want to do this. Okay, so I've checked my application out. I've got my first CakePHP folder, and everything should be good to go. So if I go to localhost tilde student, okay, we'll dive straight into the student's controller. You can see I've added a few extra pieces of test data. If I click on the view link here, you can see that the scaffolded view for this is getting a little bit silly now. In particular, this related skill students relates to this new bit of the model, and this is not really very helpful for us. We've got the student ID, the skill ID, and the rating, but we'd really like to be able to list something a little bit more meaningful, and this page is getting unwieldy. There's too much information on it. Often the way that we deal with these problems in web apps is to have some sort of tabbed interface instead for the student. So we might have basic details and then courses and then skills across the top. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at a new controller right now we've got our students controller and we're executing a view method. What we'd like to do is we'd like to be able to manage the skills of a student using a particular URL. So we'd like to say students skills and just have a page dedicated to the skills for that student. Okay, so if I start up gedit and so if I go into the controllers folder and I look at students controller, okay, let's see if we can make it a bit more readable. We've got, so this controller has been generated by the CakeBake command for the controller, so we're not using a scaffold anymore, we're using code that we can actually edit. Our skills method, if you like, it's going to be very much like the view method, but it's going to view some very specific information rather than everything about a student. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this view method and I'm going to create a skills method instead. Okay, that's pretty good. And this is all the same stuff, so we're going to say skills/4 for student 4 skills. I'm going to read in the student ID and I want to make sure the student exists, and if it does exist I want to pass the domain model through to the view controller so we can render it. So everything else is as we'd like it to be. That's good. And if I go into my views and students, so there's a convention, and the convention is that the method on the controller, Cake will try and find a template file that matches that controller. So you can see the view method, there's a view file in the views folder, sorry. So in essence, when we execute this controller using /students/skills/ and then an ID, Cake will execute this and then try and find the corresponding view. So what we need to do is, in this folder, create a new file called skills.ctp, and just while we're working on this, what we'll do is we'll copy the view like that, and we've got our skills.ctp, paste that into there, save it. Okay, so if we go back to students now, we've got all these things. We've got our view method, we click on that and we should just be able to go skills, students skills 4. Okay, and obviously because we copied the layout, we've got exactly the same information, so that's not very helpful. We should probably do something about that. So let's get rid of these, we don't need them at the moment. Obviously we're not concerned with learning about markup here. The thing which is causing the student section to be floated over to the right is this div declaration here, so I think we should get rid of that. Okay, so we'll get rid of that, and we'll get rid of the actions because we don't really want those listed in here. Okay, that should have tidied that. So all we should get at the top, having made that change, is just the basic details for the student. So it's a skills view, reload that. Okay, so we've got rid of that, cleaned that up. We actually do want to list skills, but we're not so bothered about related courses, and we want to get rid of all these other links here, so let's just tidy that up as well. Related job applications. In this particular controller method, we're not bothered about job applications, so we'll get rid of that. Yeah, job applications gone. Get rid of the actions related to the job applications. Okay, so related skill students, that's the thing that we're actually interested in. We'll leave that there for now. We'll get rid of the actions because we're not bothered about that. And here's the related courses, we're not bothered about that either, so we'll get rid of that. We'll save that. Quick reload. Okay, so this is much cleaner now. happier with that. We've got a lot of, so this is, the ID here is the skill students instance ID. We don't really need that. We don't need student ID 4 because we know that's up here. And ideally, we don't particularly wish to show the foreign key. It'd be better if we could show the skill itself. So if we go back to our editing window, the first thing we need to do is similar to customizing the view components. If we go back to the controller, Cake is only going to fetch the kind of first layer of properties by default. We need it to go a little bit deeper. We need it to fetch the foreign key values from the skills table. So in our skills method, we're going to just set recursive to 2, and we'll save that. Okay, and in our view, sorry, it's not very readable. Instead of showing skill ID, we're going to show the skill object, skill name property. Okay, so you can see instead of showing skill ID, we've got skill object, skill name. We'll save that, and we should just be able to refresh this now. Okay, so that's better, isn't it? We've got PHP, SQL and Java, so you can see now that I have registered myself with a rating of 1 in PHP, 1 in SQL and 5 in Java. Okay, we don't really need the actions on this page. We need to get rid of these extra columns. So let's go back to our editing window. Okay, actions, get rid of those. Good. And we can get rid of the ID columns. Good. Clean that out. Skill. So let's put skill name. Okay, and skills. Save. Okay. Oh, that's not bad, is it? We're starting to get there. Well, we need to get rid of the actions column heading. Actions, there it is. And of course, this what is going to become a tab isn't really student anymore. It's manage student skills. Okay. Good. Okay, so this is looking a bit tidier now. One thing we might want to do, of course, is if we're viewing a student, it's not entirely obvious that we've got this new controller action, so maybe we should list it on this page here. So if we go to the close that down. If we go to the view students and the view template, here it is, you'll see all the actions are listed. In particular, if we look at this, which one's this? The edit student action. Actually, our courses action is very similar to that, except of course we're listing courses instead of allowing editing. But if I copy this link and pop it at the bottom there, okay, and here we've got some PHP that's calling a helper method to create a HTML link, and we give it a name. So here the link name is going to be manage skills. Okay, and here we've got the action. Well, it's not edit, we want to call the skills action on our students controller, and we're going to pass through the ID of the student that we want to be able to look at the skills for. So if we save that and pop back to our view, okay, you'll see that now students view, and we've got this manage skills button on the bottom. We can click that and that'll take us through to our new controller action. Okay, that's good progress. A few other things to mention. Obviously this is just using a HTTP GET, so it's the most trivial way of extending a controller with a particular action. But if I open up the controller, you'll see if you look at the other methods, like the edit method for example, you can look at whether or not the request is a post or a put or a get. So this is how you can start to be able to save data, and you can look at the other controllers to see how you might start to do that. If you can get to that point in teaching week 33, I think you'll have got a good grasp of creating new controller methods at least. and it's a good step forwards. Okay, thanks a lot.